In case you missed it, Disney has recently been celebrating 90 years of magic. It's the company that has become so ingrained with the idea of childhood wonder that the mere mention of possibly re-releasing some of their greatest hits becomes terrifying. After all, what if they ruined our childhoods? The Mouse House now stands at the top of Hollywood and prides itself on delivering family-friendly entertainment, and they make sure this image is protected. But what about behind the scenes? The mouse hasn't always been so squeaky clean over the years, and this list will count down the top 10 moments from Disney's past that they don't want you to remember.
Dishonorable mentions.
The supposed subliminal messaging. Roasting ducks. Shark fin soup. The firing of James Gunn. Video games. The most successful animation studio of all time, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, the highest grossing nature documentaries, theme parks, theatre performances, best-selling soundtracks, sports channels, a news network, cruise line, comic books, and an upcoming streaming service. Is there anything this brand can't do? The answer is yes. Video games. Let's first state that yes, Disney has been able to produce a few gems throughout the years, but this doesn't take away from the fact that Disney Interactive Studios was ultimately a failure, losing $200 million per year from 2008 to 2012, and ultimately closing its doors after the discontinuation of Disney Infinity in 2016. It's almost incredible that Disney was not able to capitalise on their intellectual properties. Can you imagine playing an open world Aladdin, Tarzan, Peter Pan or Hercules? A Telltale type Zootopia game, a Pixar racer, a House of Mouse sports game, an RPG, Pirates of the Caribbean? It almost seems like the ideas are cooked and ready for the platter. Disney however exited the first party home console business in order to focus on the third party development, and we all know how well that's going. Disney is so successful in every other medium, so their failure to dominate the video game market is something they rather you didn't talk about. Shrek. This one might be a little bit difficult to forget. After all, Shrek stands as a character that would be able to take on any juggernaut of the Disney lineup.
Oh, hello there!
But the story that surrounds Shrek and the finished product is something Disney would probably rather we didn't highlight. It was in 2001 when Katzenberg would make his big splash with the movie that would take the world by storm, Shrek. It's the movie that would take everything you had learned from Disney fairy tales and trampled all over it like a giant gingerbread man. In many ways, the film stands as the ultimate parody of everything Disney has built its brand around. Shrek reading from a storybook only to rip it out and use it as a shit ticket. Fiona blowing up a bird, Snow White style. The It's a Small World parody, The Kingdom of Jaluk. Oh, and Lord Fuckwad. And if you can't pronounce your odds, then Lord Fuckwit. Or perhaps we should simply label him the then current Disney CEO, Michael Eisner. That would be easier. You take your pick. Parodies are often done in homage to the originals with good humour and jest. The political and business happenings behind the scenes before and during the production of Shrek mean that this is definitely not the case. Direct-to-video sequels. When it comes to animated films, Disney has long been a cut above the rest. A run spanning from 1937's Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs to last year's Ralph Breaks the Internet. These films have earned the Mouse House countless awards and ranked in billions of dollars in box office revenue. There are a few animated projects, however, that Disney seems a little less proud of. During the 1990s, Disney was on top of the world, receiving both critical and financial acclaim for each of their releases. This is when the company began to milk the cash cow and produce a number of low effort and highly questionable VHS sequels. It's not that all these sequels were horrible, it's just that they didn't compare to the original, and they were obviously produced in order to capitalise on something already established and, well, better. John Lasseter would become the head of Disney Animation and would put an end to all those very strange sequels, and we haven't heard from them ever since. I would say it's unlikely that we ever receive a live action adaptation of any of these releases, and until we do, Disney definitely don't want you remembering them. The Dark Age. If you're familiar with Disney, then it's very likely you've heard of the Disney Renaissance. But of course, to have a Renaissance, well, you have to have a Dark Age. The Disney Dark Age, also known as Disney's Bronze Age, refers to the era in Disney animated canon where there were not as many critically or financially successful animated films, unlike most films that Walt Disney himself had produced and directed while he was alive. This time period saw the release of films like The Aristocats, Robin Hood, The Rescuers, Fox and Hound. Now normally this is viewed as the darkest point in Disney's animated history. I'm here to tell you it's not. Disney's post-Renaissance Dark Age was far worse. Beginning roughly in 2000, this saw the studio trying to wrestle with 3D animation while being body slammed by stiff competition from DreamWorks and Blue Sky. Here's a few of the releases that came out during the second Dark Age. Dinosaur, Home on the Range, Chicken Little, Meet the Robinsons, and Treasure Planet. And yes, I know the internet seems to have a weird connection with these films, but I'm not afraid to say they suck. They're decent direct-to-DVD sequels at best, and until they make it into a Kingdom Hearts game, which they never will, I'm right and you're wrong. And yes, that's my measuring stick, by the way, whether they get to be in a game with the leader of the Chain Gang. Outside of Lilo and Stitch, nothing released during this time period is still heavily promoted or has a prominent merchandise presence. If Disney ever makes a live-action retelling of any of these films, excluding Lilo and Stitch, then I will have this forgettable character tattooed onto my eyelid. This is an era that Disney wants you to forget. The Lion King plagiarism. The Lion King might just be Disney's crowning achievement as an animation company. It has turned into the most successful musical ever, and its soundtrack is one of Disney's most adored. Releasing around 25 years ago, the film holds up in every single way. The reaction and anticipation for the live-action retelling is just further support of the love that people have for this film. So Disney probably wouldn't want you to remember that one of their most popular films ever has been accused of plagiarism. The accusations are linked to comparisons to the 1960s anime series Kimba the White Lion. From the epic vision of a lion standing atop Pride Rock to the unforgettable appearance of Mufasa in the clouds, the Lion King does appear to mirror Kimba at certain points. Many also reference the similarities in the characters as a proof of connection, in addition to the main characters having extremely similar names, Kimba and Simba. Kimba is also known as Leo in Jungle Emperor. There's also a baboon, bumbling hyenas, a young lion love interest, a Zazu-like bird, and an evil lion named Claw. And this isn't a conspiracy. The voice of Simba himself came out and said that he believed he was working on the American version of Kimba. These accusations could all just be the product of coincidence. Of course they could. But where there's smoke, there's fire. And Disney don't want you looking at that fire. Stereotyping. They might be known as a family-friendly source of entertainment, but throughout its history, Disney has been able to churn out a considerable amount of questionable stereotypes. The Native Americans or Red Man from Peter Pan, the Siamese cats from Lady and the Tramp, Jim Crow from Dumbo, the Black Centaur from Fantasia. Many have even questioned the stereotyping of femininity in the Disney princess lineup, and many have linked the elderly and evil Disney characters. It can be argued that these characters were just products of the time, but it's hard to ignore some of the glaring misjudgments Disney would rather that you did forget. War propaganda. Contrary to popular internet belief, no, Disney did not produce pro-Nazi war propaganda, but they were responsible for creating propaganda for the US government. It was said that the widespread familiarity could benefit the US government greatly in producing support for the war. It's not surprising to see social commentary slipping through in some of Disney's productions, Zootopia being an excellent example of this. But the company that prides itself on family-friendly values doesn't want you to remember the fact that they were involved in wartime propaganda. And more than anything, they probably don't want you to remember Donald Duck in a Nazi costume. Animal Kingdom. It's the third most visited theme park in North America and the sixth most visited theme park in the world. But even during the early planning stages of the park, the idea drew controversy from animal rights groups and PETA. The groups fought against the idea of creating theme parks which the animals were held in captivity for the pleasure of others. PETA made multiple attempts to have travel agencies try to boycott the park. Before the theme park could even open, another controversy highlighted itself where 30 animals died at the theme park from September through April because of incidences, poisoning, fighting and other causes. Although the US Department of Agriculture cleared Disney of wrongdoing, the inspectors cited a possible error in professional judgment for the causing of the deaths of 2 otters. But the inspectors concluded that the error did not violate federal animal laws. Animal Kingdom also has a unique award of ranking number 10 on the 2014 list of the worst zoos for elephants in the world. Song of the South. This was nearly an honourable mention, not because it's not important, quite the opposite. I mean, what is left to say about Song of the South that hasn't already been said? It's a film that most likely will never see a home release, and there are very few productions that receive this kind of treatment from the Mouse House. The movie, based on the short stories by Joel Chandler Harris, focuses on the South after the abolition of slavery. The problem? Perhaps creating a film with a huge number of offensive racial stereotypes and glorifying the life of African Americans on the plantations. Disney definitely don't want you to remember that they have created a film that has been labelled one of Hollywood's most racist texts ever. John Lasseter's sexual misconduct. John Lasseter might just be one of the most successful producers in Hollywood history. His films have grossed that of $19 billion worldwide. And if you don't know who he is, he's the man that oversaw all of Pixar's films since its creation. He directed Toy Story, Toy Story 2, A Bug's Life and Cars. He ended up becoming the chief creative officer of Walt Disney and Pixar Animation and helped Walt Disney overcome its second dark age. Many labelled him the modern Walt Disney. This was all before November 2017, when Lasseter announced that he would be taking a 6-month leave of absence after acknowledging his allegations of workplace sexual misconduct, stating, "It had been brought to my attention that I have made some of you feel disrespected or uncomfortable." The leave of absence ended up becoming a permanent one, and in June of 2018, Disney announced that Lasseter would be leaving the company. The man who defined Pixar and redefined Disney animation was blacklisted from the company, and he's someone Disney doesn't want you to remember when thinking about their animated dominance over the last 2 decades. Thank you everybody so much for watching. If you want to subscribe to the channel, you can do that below. Check out the Patreon in the description. If you think I've missed anything, leave that in the comment section below, and until next time.